rates taking place in the near future. If they had have said that, that may have changed things, but they didn't. So again, if we're looking at these predicted medium and long-term differences, the medium and the long-term differences right here are coming off the strength of the buy signal, and we're starting to push lower. So now if we take this one step further on the US CAD pair, let's have a look right now and go into our short-term crossover. Our short-term crossover actually took place at the 106.50 level, and it's been moving lower. We've got a strong candlestick yesterday that moved back up, but it didn't hold. It didn't hold, and it's pushed lower. Now, if we look at the medium-term outlook for this pair, we've got a crossover there too. So our short and our medium-term crossovers are both telling us that US CAD is losing steam up in this 105 to 107 range. Now, again, important to look at all three crossovers. The long-term crossover, not cooperating here whatsoever. So we still got a fairly wide gap here in the differences. So what we'll do here now is let's go in and see if we can get more insight into this by going into the daily report. Now, with the daily report today, again, we've got this 104.30 as a predicted low, 105.90 is the predicted high, but we've got this neural index is positive. So we have a mixed signal right across the board here. So that's when we want to look at the predicted short, medium, and long-term differences to get a directional strength from not just an oversold or overbought level, but again, using this as a strength indicator. What do we see here? Well, what I see is that the US CAD appears to be losing steam. We've gone from positive, let's start right here, positive 97. We're now at negative 37. We were positive 152 here this is just on May the 21st. That was only a week ago. We've gone from 152 to negative 55, positive 126 to positive 50. The long-term indicator is still struggling. The predicted differences, there's still a 50-point difference there. So the long-term is not as clear, but the short and the medium term suggest that this is going to push lower. Now let's have a look and see what's happening on US CAD today. We've got 105.75 as a high. Again, we've got a lower high. 105.90 is what VantagePoint recommended. Missed it by 15 pips. Still an incredibly accurate call on VantagePoint, but more importantly, what we're looking for here specifically is, did it get past that 105.90? Did it even get to the 105.90? Well, it didn't. Now, it's gone towards that high. Now, another thing I want to point out with currencies, without trying to simplify the process of currency trading, is that the reason the predicted high and the predicted low are so important is mainly because currencies move 1% of their value per day. That's it. Okay, there's a few breakouts a year, maybe 3 or 4 breakouts a year, but 100 point, 150 point move, guys, that's not a breakout. A 500, 600, 700 pip, that's a breakout. So what I'm suggesting here is that on a day-over-day basis, the market will very often seek out the high, and once it's got to the high, it will then turn around and seek out the low. This happens on a day-to-day basis. Now, myself with my own trading, I prefer to trade in one direction based around the trend as identified by VantagePoint, not by what I think, because that necessarily may not be accurate. There's things that the software is looking at that I'm not. So again, we can see US CAD is falling, so it's already gone up to the 105.75. It's now heading towards this 104.30. So is there anything potentially that could get in its way? Well, yes, there is. We've got the 18-day predicted moving average right here, which is using the VantagePoint software. We're using this, in this particular case, as pivot support. We have 3 very clear, identifiable candlesticks that have come down and hit this 18-day predicted moving average. Now, guys, this has already happened. So you cannot argue with the fact that this 18-day predicted moving average, the 8-day predicted moving average, and even the 3-day predicted moving average all carry a significant amount of weight. But when we're talking about a trend that's under pressure, right now we've got a crossover from VantagePoint that took place on April the 28th that crossed over to the upside. This uptrend has lasted about a month. Well, now it's coming under pressure. When is the last time that this came under pressure? Thing I want to point out to everybody, almost the exact same time. You can see that these candlesticks moved below the 18-day predicted moving average. However, the trend then continued. So we have a very mixed signal. So for today, we want to be watching the 104.30 and the 104.55 area very closely. We're approaching that area right now. It could be argued that we should be getting into a buy position on this. It's a buying opportunity. Well, potentially, yes, it is. But again, crude oil plays a very big factor in this. So let's take this one step further here. Let's look at crude oil, and because we're looking at trading the U.S.-Canadian pair. What about crude oil? Well, crude oil is showing somewhat of a buy signal here. Now, if we look at the short-term crossover from Vantage Point, we've got a crossover to the upside on crude oil, pretty much exactly where I made this recommendation last week. Now, looking at the medium-term crossover from Vantage Point, again, it's crossed over to again, the upside. You can see the pattern here between US CAD and light sweet crude oil. Not only is Vantage Point very accurate in calling both of these two, the correlation is pretty much 100%. And then, unfortunately, we have to then throw equities into the mix to make things that much more difficult. But again, that's trading. That's what everybody needs to watch out for. So looking at this, what we're suggesting here is that crude oil is probably going to move higher. Now, highs and lows for the day. We've got 74.23 as the high, 71.07 is the low. Now, I can pull up crude oil on my FXCM CFD platform. We can see that the low is 71.66 right over here. I have a pending order sitting here waiting to buy 4 positions at 71.37. This has been sitting in since last night. It has not been triggered. So we can identify that the market went after the predicted low, but it didn't get there. Now, did it get to the predicted high? Well, no, it didn't do that either. So we're sitting at the high for the day of 72.96. Excuse me. So what we can take from this right now is that right now we have a higher low. We have US Canada pushing and testing the low for today, US Canada, 104.54. It's stuck on this 18-day predicted moving average from Vantage Point, potentially for the 4th day in a row. Now, my concern is, looking at this chart, we're going to pull this up and we're going to bring up that triple EMA crossover again, because it's very important to review this. Again, looking at the bigger picture. If the US Canada can, excuse me here, we're just going to pull this up. The US CAD pair, if this area holds again, then this could be a bullish move for US Canada. So we're going to be watching this very closely to see if we can get a sustained break below this 104.55. Now, we've closed yesterday. We went down to the same area. You can see right here, the low for yesterday was, again, 104.20, but then it closed at 105.48. It shot out of there like a cannon. So we really need to observe all of these things. Again, the beauty of having the Vantage Point software set up like this with the triple EMA crossover, your high, your low, your close from the previous day, is that we don't want to forget about what happened yesterday. Very important. So for today, are we going to close above or below 105.48? Right now, one would say, oh, geez, we're going to easily close below 105.48. Well, it's not that simple, is it? Because again, we went down to 104.20, and by the end of the day, it had moved 120 pips, 128 pips aggressively higher right around